Super happy to be here with you today. It's going to be a fun today. I have one of my very good friends, one of my very good senior friends. We have been friends for a good number of years. He's been an inspiration. He's been the definition of someone who is had to keep going, someone that you should have in your life. Get ready for today's conversation. It's going to be super, super amazing. I'm having conversation today with Sam Olarenwaju from the UK. I want you to sit back, relax, and as we get into the conversation, I'm going to let him talk about himself a little bit. But first of all, I want you to go on and invite someone to be part of this conversation today. I want you to go on and put your hand on the share buttons and begin to share and invite someone, tell someone to get into the right position for today's conversation. It's going to be amazing, amazing. We're going to be talking about success. We're going to be talking about continuity. We're going to be talking about diverse issues that affect everyday life. And I know it's going to be a wonderful conversation that you want to be part of today. So, like I said, get into the right place, get a cup of coffee. It's going to be super, super amazing. So, I'm going to just give you a minute one more time to go ahead and invite your friends, invite people to be part of the conversation today. You don't want to miss any aspect of the conversation. So you have about 1 minute to go ahead and you have 1 minute to go ahead and invite someone to be part of it as we get ready for the conversation. And so it's live on Facebook, it's live on Instagram. So go ahead and invite somebody to be part of the conversation today. One more time, my name is Chigozie George, and I'm happy to be your host. So let me quickly welcome my favorite friend, my favorite person, someone that I know has greatly inspired my life. Please welcome with me, Sam Oyebola Olarenwaju. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir, Mr. Chigozie George. How are you? How have you been?
I'm good.
It's such a
I'm
it's
good.
such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to be on this stream with you. It's a privilege. I do not take it for granted. It's an opportunity to interact, to socialize, and then carry along our friends and family on contemporary issues. And yeah, thank you so much for the initiative. We are
You're welcome.
celebrating.
You're very much welcome. How's the weather today in UK? How's it going over there?
You can tell that the British weather is as unpredictable as anything. It started out very cold. Now the sun is bright and shining, and then we can't really tell what's going to be the next moment. Yeah, but at the moment, yeah, we're coping. It's good. Thank you. And over
That's
there, what was it? Was it seeming like?
here in Izmir, Turkey, it's been pretty cool, and we had some drizzlings this morning, but it's okay. Was out this morning, then came in, but it's chilly, but we go. That's it is what it is, like you always say. It is exactly what it is, like you always say. So, so how is life? How's life in the UK? How are you coping? I know it's a different life here. How is it for you living abroad as a foreigner? How is it like in the UK for you?
I think it. Um, I wouldn't stop persons have been misled and they have a misunderstanding of what life is like in the Western world.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean that's my position, my perspective of things. Um, I think the basic difference between the Western world and, if I may say, Africa in particular, is the economic and social stabilities that exist much more than many people think that it's a very easy life out here. Life
Mm,
can be very, very daunting, very challenging. You know what I mean? Because apparently there are rules and regulations that must be obeyed here when it
mhm,
comes to the way of life.
Mm-hmm.
There are standards that must be upheld that you
Mm-hmm.
probably will find it easy to evade back in Africa, in some other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a tall order, if I must say. It's a very, very, very tall order. It's all all challenging, all demanding, but like invariably in the end, um, you can only be rest assured that whatever you put in, you get to have your results and the reward for it in this part of the world, if I may
Mm-hmm.
say.
So the difference is whatever you put in, you get the reward of it eventually. It's
Yeah,
very
I
daunting,
think
like you said. It's very
I can say that
exhausting, but whatever you put in, you get a result of it.
to a very large extent, to a very
Mm,
large extent, to a very large extent. Outside of some other factors that militate against people, or if I may say, that militate against immigrants generally.
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm,
because there are other factors that you have to deal with, but all said and done, you're still to a very large extent guaranteed of rewards and results for your garbage in.
hmm. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask one question that I've always, I've tried to ask every of my guests who I know to an extent have gotten to a certain point in their life. They've worked hard. I know you've been always a very hardworking person in every aspect of your life. You represent someone who understands the concept of working hard and putting in their very best. So one of the things I'm going to ask is, what has been your biggest challenge in getting to where you are today? What's been your biggest challenge?
Wow, that's a big one. I think I would basically hinge it on the roles of well-informed mentors.
Hmm.
In life, everybody would always need a pathfinder, a trailblazer, or mentor, a guide. I think it's fundamental to success in life.
Hmm.
Somebody said, who you follow to a very large extent determines what follows you.
Hmm.
And people cannot teach what they don't know.
Hmm.
Now, in retrospect, which I'm intentional about, again and again, I've had to sit down and ask myself, what could I have done differently? Or how would life have gone if certain things were different from the outset? Things that lacked is because some of the persons that by accident we found to be our mentors, our leaders, were not well furnished, equipped enough for the life ahead of us. As in, they themselves were lacking in direction in certain aspects of life. And as such, what they didn't have themselves, they could not have given to us. And then, if I may say, we follow them sheepishly, uh, in trust. And I think to a very large extent, he had his downturn on many aspects of our lives. So I would say that there's a strong place when you have a vision or you have a dream, which also a mentor can help you to define or should have helped you to define. But if the mentor himself or herself doesn't see beyond their nose, then what can they possibly pass on to you?
Hmm. So you're saying that one of the biggest challenges that we've had over the years of growing coming up from where we came up from, was the absence of well-informed mentors. People
I,
who
I
didn't.
make bold I make bold to say that without any indictment to any person, without undermining the the work that our mentors did, but it is just the absolute truth, if I
Hmm.
may say.
You
I
know,
appreciate them.
it's very important that people understand that. See, when we make such statements as to say we had mentors who didn't see as far as who didn't guide us to see as far as was required, it's not like we're trying to undermine the work they did. We do
Not at
appreciate
all. Not
what
at
they
all.
did, but we
Not
are
at all.
also now understanding that there were deficiencies in the in the
Apparently.
system. There were deficiencies in
Apparently.
the things we were taught. There were deficiencies in the things we were made to hold on to. If I understand
Absolutely.
you.
I agree absolutely with you. Like, for instance, you can imagine that okay, let me put it this way. When everyone gets to go to school, we were taught that 1 plus 1 is equal to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then for all of our lives, we have believed it. We have not necessarily debated it,
Mm-hmm.
because someone that was in the position of tutelage, a mentor, informed
Mm-hmm.
us as such.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the mentors put across to us, more often than not, we took it hook, line, and sinker,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived with it.
Hmm.
Practically, we ran with it, only to find out over time that, come to think of it, it seems like these things are not producing the requisite results and the reward.
Yes.
Time, when you now begin to compare notes, you begin to compare, and then you realize, well, I think, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and without any sense um hurt towards any one of them, because in our own best interest, um
Yes.
in their own best knowledge, but it wasn't just sufficient enough.
Mm-hmm.
My lecturer would say, you did your best, but your best wasn't sufficient enough.
Mm-hmm. You know, if I may come in, sir.
Yeah, please feel free.
You know, one of the things that I've come to understand is, and then people didn't like when we ask questions. And people,
Ah,
the moment, I remember once we were in a meeting and I asked a particular question, and someone felt offended, annoyed that we questioned that line of thoughts. I think one of the major challenges is when we don't question lines of thoughts, when we don't
mm,
question the things that people put forward to us. There's this belief that when you ask questions, when you question systems, when you question beliefs around you, that you are becoming rebellious, that you are
mm,
becoming, um, you know, that you don't just want to fall in line. So there's this
yeah, yeah.
system that makes us to just stay in line without questioning what we are told,
Mm.
without questioning the things that were being dumped into us. So how important is it that we learn to question our mentors, that we learn to question people above us, people that we are learning from? How important is it that we learn to ask questions?
Oh, a great philosopher said that when you don't ask questions, you don't get answers.
Hmm.
If you don't ask questions, you will never get answers. You need to ask yourself questions. You need to ask the world around you questions. You need to ask the elements questions. It's in the process of questioning things that you
Hmm.
get fundamental life answers.
Hmm.
But you see, one of the challenges with us in Africa, I don't know if it's the same in many parts of the world, is that culture and tradition has made it such that mentors, leaders, pathfinders, they are a sort of know it all.
Hmm.
They seem impervious, they seem like they got it all together, which is not true.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, in the Western world here, you have all the rights, all the privileges to ask all manners of questions at all levels of
Mm-hmm.
life, at all levels of business, at all, in every place, in every way, you can ask questions. And I personally believe or think that this is one of the reasons why children brought up in the Western world, they've got greater guts, they've built confidence over
Mm-hmm.
the years because they were not silenced whilst they were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They could
True.
express themselves. They learned that expressing themselves was their right and their privilege right from babyhood.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike in Africa, like if you ever get to say something, even your parents will say, "Did you just say that? Are you talking? Do you know?" Like, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So you had to be mute. You were just seen. You were not heard.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm talking about here, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But then if we had the opportunities, like in the academic circles, for instance, they will talk about critical thinking, critical reasoning, critical questions.
Yes.
So you bring it up and then we discuss it, whether they be professors, emeritus, whatever. You put up your questions and nobody, you seem to be unreasonable.
Hmm.
But
True.
like you said, in your own case, I mean, you were seen to be rebellious. You were seen to be um proud, to be arrogant, to think that you know for asking questions.
It's not just, it's something that is, like every time you attempt to ask a question, someone feels like you are challenging their authority. No, I'm not challenging your authority by asking question. I'm challenging myself to open
Mhm.
myself up to more knowledge. So I
Yeah,
think it's important that at all levels, people learn to, even in a company, the companies that succeed are companies that open room up for
yeah.
critical thinking, constructive
Mhm,
questioning, constructive
mhm,
conversations. I'll give you an
mhm.
example. We've been trying to break through a particular line of limitations at our workplace, you know.
Yeah,
But yesterday, what I simply did was I took one of our staff out, and it was since we're just moving from the winter to into the early times of the summer. So the sun was out, and I know people love to sunbathe. People stay in the sun because we're just coming from the winter. So I said, okay, let's take a walk in the sun. And I said, and she said, I know you want to brainstorm with me. And
that's
she
a
was
good
like,
one.
he said,
That's
boss,
a good
I
one.
know, I know this. I know you want to brainstorm with me because you like brainstorming, you know.
Yeah.
So I think we didn't have that opportunity where people allowed us to brainstorm with them, brainstorm about
No,
our future
no,
with them, brainstorm
we
about
never
the
had that
present.
privilege. We never had that privilege, and to be honest, it didn't help in any way.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't help in any way because it's in the process of asking questions, whether they seem to be meaningless or meaningful, that you get answers, that you get to be enlightened, that you get to be educated, that you get to be informed, that you get to be guided. And the fact is that, let me also put it this way, our brains are wired differently. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that. Now, everybody's way of reasoning, of thinking, or of imagining seemingly is different.
Mm-hmm.
People see this from different perspectives. And so, in the place of asking questions, you are invariably presenting new perspectives or making people to see things in different lights other than they are even seeing it. And in the
Mm-hmm.
end, it's meant to add to the body of knowledge that we all have corporately.
Mm-hmm.
Do,
True.
do, 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 do you understand what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
if I get to let out my thoughts, then if you are patient enough, if you are simple enough, if you are humble enough to process my line of thought, you might just have added, like I've had the privilege where we're in an academic environment, and then one of us says something, and then the prof said, well, that's a new line of thought, and then he or she made notes and said, I'm going to make more findings about it. But that's the challenge, because people in and around the Western world in this particular plane are much more tolerant, they're much more
Mhm.
teachable than,
Mhm.
unfortunately, we are in some parts of Africa and other parts of the world,
Mhm.
where people are more cultural and traditional about um, what leadership is all about.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you mind me if I step in there? You talked about cultural impact on leadership. Cultural impact on leadership. Now, at all levels of leadership, what is the role of culture? How has
Right.
that affected our mindset, to the definition of leadership? You know, because I see leadership differently,
Yep.
from what I see people differently.
Apparently,
So,
apparently.
what is the role of culture in how we see leadership and how we view leaders around the world and the continent of Africa and in our country, Nigeria?
You know, um, culture and tradition are two factors that are fundamental to people's ways of reasoning, thinking, acting, living. You can't separate a people's way of life, a people's sociology, philosophy, psychology from culture and tradition, because they were actually born into culture, into tradition. Every part of the world has their own signature culture and tradition.
Mhm.
But the fundamental issue here is, how do we now, to what extent do we use culture and tradition to better our leadership or to improve on our leadership, or how do we align our culture and tradition with what global leadership is defined as?
Mhm.
Because culture and tradition is good,
Yes.
not necessarily in all of its entirety. There are, there, are,
Yes.
there are certain aspects of culture and tradition that I will frantically frown against,
Mhm.
that is abhorrent, that doesn't go with civilization, doesn't add up to um, growth and development. But then there are diverse aspects of culture and tradition that is complementary to global success. For
Mhm.
instance, respect, honor, dignity for elders, for the less privileged, and all of that. But we now need to be intentional. We need to be intentional
Mhm.
about not allowing culture and tradition to taint the globally accepted definitions, practice of leadership that works well. And I think this is one of the challenges. I keep saying this because um, it resonates more to me as part of where I originated from. It will be difficult or impossible for me to talk about issues, matters without relating it back to Africa, where I'm from, or Nigeria, where I'm fundamentally from. Now, if we're not careful enough, if we're not objective enough, then our culture and our tradition will taint the fundamental principles of global leadership that has been, impactful all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to check. And this is one of the big problems in Africa. Because, for instance, virtually all of our political economic leaders are not accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But that cannot happen in the Western world. It's not possible. It's not possible. Your life is in the light.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about you is in the open. Every Everybody is being checked. But you see, you remember that it's a patriarchal mentality and perspective. Gods, whatever they say, nobody can check it. The wives can't check it. The sons and daughters here. I can walk up to my manager. I can walk up to anybody.
You mentioned our political economic leaders, but you left out powerful religious leaders.
Oh my gosh.
I'm being to use the to not use the word faith leaders because I
Yeah.
know the dichotomy between religious leaders and faith leaders. Now, you mentioned your capacity with all the experience you have had in your faith work across our continent of Africa are held are accountable themselves.
Oh, that's a big one. Um, oh, I've had the privilege of living practically in two worlds now. For very many years, more than half of my life, I lived in Africa. I traveled extensively around Africa, well over 15 countries in Africa. Um, in all the francophone countries, the anglophone countries, and all of this time, I was intentional about seeing how leadership runs. Now, being in the Western world, I'm able to do a comparison of what obtains in Africa, Anglophone and Francophone Africa, and what obtains in Europe in terms of leadership generally, political, economical, and religious. And then let me bring it down to the religious leaders. I've interacted with religious leaders, Anglophone and Francophone, in all of Africa to a very large extent. Now I'm in the Western world, I'm interacting with religious leaders, and I can tell the difference. I basically can tell the difference.
So, do you think our leaders are accountable?
I cannot say that our leaders in Africa, religious leaders specifically, are accountable in so many ways. I cannot say that. I'll be speaking against my conscience for me to say that. I would have lost integrity. I would have lost sincerity, and I will lose innocence if I ever get to say that in so many ways. In actual fact, I had the privilege whilst I was doing um, my master's degree in theology here to interact with a professor of mine who lived 7 years in Nigeria specifically,
Mhm.
studying the Pentecostal, charismatic, evangelical churches, the best of them. And whatever I'm saying now is to a large extent his position after 7 years of research, specifically Nigeria being the case study. And he had examples and reasons for it. The way religious leaders operate in Africa as regards or relative to how they operate in the Western world. It's a great gulf between the two. It's unthinkable, it's unimaginable. The kind of um, nefarious activities that happens amongst the religious circles, especially in Black Africa.
Can I, you know, I know in my conversation, I tried my very best to make sure that everybody, whether regardless of your whatever walks of life you come from, I want this conversation to be something that everybody can benefit, learn something from. So what you're simply
That's
saying
important.
out across all is that there is need for leaders in all spheres of life to give themselves room to be accountable to somebody.
Apparently, you see, the thing is, philosophers, psychologists have said that power corrupts. Position of power, then you can tell the power of power.
Hmm.
And if any mortal, regardless of their religious upbringings or backgrounds, their religious philosophies, or whatever faith they belong to, is not accountable, is on his way down the drain.
Okay,
And
now that's
he or she is a ticking bomb.
that's a big statement that you
He or
are making.
she is a
That
ticking bomb.
anybody that is not accountable to anybody is a disaster going somewhere to happen. Anybody, any
Absolutely.
leader, anybody at any level of position
Absolutely.
that is not accountable to anybody is a ticking bomb, is a disaster
Because
going somewhere to happen.
we are all fallible. The best of men are men. The best leaders that we have had in history, they've had their own shortfalls. Political, religious, economic leaders. They've made mistakes. They found themselves in error because they are human. But you
Hmm.
see, when we are accountable, it helps us to have our heads straight up. When we give room, the privilege, the opportunity for people to check us. And that's what we're talking about. Mentors, we're talking about, because definitely there are three levels of relationship. There are people are ahead of you, people on the same level with you, people that are below you. All of these three people, you must be accountable to them. You cannot be responsible for people and you are not responsible to anyone.
Hmm. You
It
cannot be
doesn't work.
responsible for people and you're not responsible to anyone.
It's not going to work.
So
It's not
it
going to
means
work.
it means that people need to create systems that hold them accountable.
Sincerely, honestly, that's
Can
our life.
I?
You see, excuse me, Mr. Chigozie. You see, this is the basic. Like for me, I sit back at times and I try to make comparisons between the Western world, the the global North and the global South and all of that. And I ask myself, what is the major difference between this part of the world and the other part of the world? And this is exactly what we're talking about here, the place and the position of accountability, being responsible to the people that you lead.
Hmm.
Everyone in this country who is in the position of power is responsible not just for people, but responsible to the same people.
Hmm.
I've been in
So
church. I've been in church here. I know you need to present the accounts of the church annually. You need to present it to the government. You need to present it to your members. You need to do this. You need to do that, such that there are checks and balances. That's what it means. There must be checks and balances. Nobody knows it all. None of us is perfect in character.
hmm.
Everyone go wild. But when you know, you have an inner knowing that you are accountable to people, it seems to me that you exercise more caution. And that's the case here in the Western world.
Accountability makes us exercise more caution. Our
Oh,
actions and keep us in check. We throw caution to the wind. We know every aspect of life. We've talked about leadership. How about people, whether they are Muslims, whether they are Christians, whether they are Buddhists, what inclinations that they align with? People who say, because I'm not accountable. So don't you think
mm.
that almost impossible to question someone when they say do this? How do you keep that in put that into account? Question God, but I know you can question.
In every organization, there must be them in place that checks things. To large extent, institutionalized.
Hmm,
There are structures and place for every one person. to be accountable. That's one of the first things I need to mention. Secondly, you and I know that we are both been in circles of faith and religion. We are people who have interest in matters that pertains to faith and religion, and we have done that for more than 2 decades. Probably we're in the third decade of studying issues or participating in religious organizations or in places of faith and all of that. And I have a definition for anyone who wants to put themselves in a place where they're not accountable. I call it charismatic witchcraft. I call it charismatic witchcraft. And what is the definition of witchcraft? Manipulation, intimidation, and control. Manipulation, intimidation, and control. When people are not accountable, then they manipulate people with their words and by their actions. They intimidate them with their words and their actions. And they control them with their words and their actions. And then I'm going to use the example you gave. If any person who is a religious leader comes forth and says, I had an encounter with the Supreme Being, and the Supreme Being has given me instructions, and as such, those instructions cannot be changed. First and foremost, he or she has manipulated or is manipulating his or her followers by those choice words that he has said, the Supreme Being said. And then secondly, is intimidating them, saying that since it is the Supreme Being that said so, then I cannot and I should not and I must not be checked. And then based on what he claimed that the Supreme Being has told him or her, then he will now control them. So, the Supreme Being was the one that said this thing to me, so everybody has to follow. Then he's controlling them. But you see, this does not obtain in the global north. You can bring up your own philosophy, your own private experience, and make it a law over the people. It's not possible. It's not. I can guarantee you, Mr. Chigozie George, it is absolutely impossible. Honestly, because there are fundamental things that are foundational factors and principles that guides such circles. So somebody's not just going to come up and say, oh, God has said that this is what I should do, or the Supreme Being appeared to me or visited me or talked to me or whatever, and as such, this is absolute. Nobody can check it. Nobody, because like I keep saying, where there are no checks and balances, you know it too well, and I think it's the same thing. I want to presume it's the same thing in Turkey. There are rules and regulations for virtually all things in the Western world. There's a limit to the amount of alcohol that you can take if you must drive.
Yes.
These are the checks and balances we're talking about. And then even if the PM was to drive and he went above that limit, and the Metropolitan Police stopped him and they checked him, if they brutalized him and it was above it, he will pay for it. He would pay for it.
I think this is also obtainable in Africa, in many African countries. This is also obtainable. It is just that it is not followed. It is not followed through. It is just that
what is
people
the
have
power?
learned.
What is the relevance? What is the relevance of rules and regulations, that are not followed, that are not abided by? They say that people will only do what you supervise or what you inspect. If you give instructions, there's what is called standards, and there's what is called conformity to standards. When there are standards, but there's no conformity to standards, of what value are those standards?
When
Because
there are standards, but there are no conformity to those
of
standards,
what
of
value
what
are the
value
standards?
are those standards?
And I'll go back to what you have said. Why is it that people will not conform to standards? Because leadership will not conform to standards. And when leadership is not living or leading by example, then followership will do otherwise, apparently.
Great. So you're saying the leaders must conform to the standards if they want the populace to conform to the standards. Okay, let me quickly.
Trust me, if the prime minister of the UK will not conform to standards, there's every tendency I might not. Is the issue of conscience.
Hmm.
It's morality. It's a philosophy. Because if the prime minister does it, then everybody can do it. What is good for the goose is good for the gander, they say.
I totally agree with you. And I think that's one of the major challenges of leadership around the world. That's one of the major challenges, on in every sphere of life. If you come down to Nigeria, if you come down to Africa, come down to many parts of the world, if leaders don't live following the standards, it becomes very difficult for the populace to follow the same standards. So
That is more than true. Very
having
more than
said
true.
that, having said that, let me ask one question that I want us to get to because of time. Now, um, the role of politics, international politics, international,
Mm, mm,
issues and all of that. One of them is the recent issue with the airpiece. Airpiece,
yeah,
the airpiece Nigeria, flight company. I was having a conversation with someone, and the person said to me a couple of months ago that a flight from Lagos to London was almost as much as 5 million naira, which is about, as a current exchange rate now, which is about five point something, five plus $1,000, like
mhm,
that. Then Airpiece came into the equation, and then they
mhm.
suddenly brought it down to 1 point something million, which is about $1,000 plus. Now,
Yeah,
so it was possible for these international airlines to fly people from Nigeria to London for $1,000 plus. It was always possible.
yep.
So why did they continue to exploit the people? And haven't got Airpiece into the system now to check that exploitation.
That's the
What
very word you just mentioned. To
what
check.
must we do? What should we do as Nigerians? What should Africans do to make sure that such kind of exploitations are ended?
You see, Mr. Chigozie, you already helped the question. You helped me with the answer. You said the epics came in to check. The truth is, I might not know exactly um depths of psychology, human psychology and philosophy,
Mhm.
human reasoning, and all of that. It still goes back to all that we've been saying. The human nature can be very corruptive,
Hmm.
and that does not exempt the global north in any
Mhm.
way. Because I keep asking myself the questions, and I ask my professors these questions. Issues that border on colonization, issues that border on slavery. What would have prompted anyone to leave their own space, their own environment, and then move across the oceans to take advantage, to exploit other people? It is that human nature.
Hmm.
It is that this human nature. And they did that successfully because they were not checked.
Hmm.
To a very large extent, they were not checked. Rather, many persons in leadership in those places that were invaded cooperated with the invaders for cigarettes, for mirrors, for gunpowder, and what have you. The same thing applies here when it comes to um, The airlines we're talking about here, they had their field day. They were operating without checks because Nigeria specifically did not have a carrier of our own. So they could exploit. The natural man is exploitative.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you, this is my own position, my own conviction, my own reality. And everyone unpruned, everyone who doesn't have checks and balances around them, there's a problem going somewhere to happen.
Hmm.
And so all of these airlines continued to exploit us from Africa, and it wasn't the same rates with other parts of the world
Yes.
until somebody came into the scene. Somebody stepped in. So it's still the same dynamics of leadership, followership, global politics, the human nature, and all of that. And the one and only thing that Africa, and specifically Nigeria, must do for herself is to raise the bar high.
Hmm.
Excellence will naturally attract. If Airpeace, for instance, as well as other organizations, indigenous organizations in and from Africa, will raise their standards high, trust me, naturally, normally, with little or no efforts, there's going to be a change. Like, excuse me, like you just said, the other airlines were forced to make necessary changes. When didn't they make the change? They did. It was expedient for them to do so. They were constrained, they were compelled, without physical force, without harassment or intimidation from Airpeace. Are you still there, Mr. Chigozie?
I'm here. I'm here with you.
They were forced to make the necessary changes, to make the Airpeace never negotiated with them. They only right. They evaluated, they fixed prices based on, and then
So
everything that has been standing contrary to norm crashed within 1 week.
so it's we will not be too far away from the truth when we say that there is an allegiance to exploit Africa and to keep Africa exploited. There is this allegiance to exploit Africa to keep Africa exploited.
From
And
slavery, from colonization, the exploitation started. And the truth is, it hasn't stopped absolutely. It hasn't stopped. And I'm sorry to say, it can only and it will only cease if and when Africa and other parts of the world arise. But it's not a physical confrontation. It's about putting policies in place, principles in place, programs in place that will naturally, normally crash the existing forces and elements that has held her all of our life.
hmm,
Trust me, trust
hmm,
me, trust me. You can. This is a perfect example we see with Airpeace. Like I wanted to buy a ticket, and I was checking and all of that, and then I just found out that the prices had slashed, come down
yes,
to. I was wondering, because I wasn't even thinking at that point in time that it was consequent upon the entrance of Airpeace into the market. I was just wondering. Imagine like ticket that was meant to be 1,500 suddenly goes to 7,750, and I was wondering what's happening here.
I saw it. I saw it, and I was perplexed myself.
Now
I was perplexed myself.
imagine, sir, if there were three of those companies from Africa, or if there was four of them from Africa. Did you get my point? That
Hmm.
means the deal is still going to be better, much better. This is just within a week of entrance. It's not about words, it's about actions. When we take reasonable, responsible actions, when we take responsibility for ourselves in Africa and do the right thing, then the global north will naturally, normally be forced to put changes in place
Let,
relative to our existence.
let me quickly come into something. I think we've trashed that aspect of the conversation. Let me bring this to individuals now. Getting to a level of success is not one of the easiest things. Just before the conversation started, we had so much conversation about that already, and I feel like asking, what are the essential elements for
Oh my,
success? We see the
that's
success
a
of
book.
several
That's
people.
a book.
We
Mr.
see,
Chigozie, that's a
unless
book.
you are born with a silver spoon,
Hmm.
what are the essential elements of or principles of success that you think every young person or every person needs to pick up in their path?
Mr. Chigozie George, this is a very intelligent question, and I'll be honest with you. Last month, I sat back and I was trying to make a summary of ten fundamentals for global success. I was looking back in retrospect to my life, my good, bad, and ugly experiences of life, business, and everything, and I wanted to put things together like a summary, my own personal narrative
Hmm.
of what I think are the essentials for global success. I mean,
Hmm.
all round success, success in all of its diversities.
Hmm.
And in no particular order, and with little time left for us, I'm just going to say the first and the foremost thing for me is self, the issue of identity. Who am I? If you don't know who you are, your potentials, your strengths, you need to discover your weakness. All in all, you need to take the pains, whether by seminars, by conferences, by inquiry, by mentorship. Spend quality time to first and foremost discover your life purpose, your goals, your ambitions, your aspirations. Absolutely encapsulated. Who am I? That's the first question. You need to know exactly who you are.
Hmm.
I'll say secondly, beyond discovering all of those things, is you need to have a very strong passion to be fulfilled in line with your discovery.
Hmm.
You have to be determined. There are obstacles in life, absolutely challenges, there are bumps on the way, on the pathway of the journey of life. The stormy weathers, name it, whatever definitions, appellations you want to give to it. But in the midst of it, you have to be determined to succeed. You have to
Hmm.
be passionate about succeeding. Thirdly, quickly, I think that everybody needs a mentor. A mentor, somebody. You need to find somebody who is, so to say, on the same play, who's traveled the journey that you're trying to take ahead of you. Somebody who has done what you're trying to do. Somebody that has a similar or same vision, dream, goal, aspiration like you are, that you can look up to, that you can relate with, that can listen to you, that can guide, direct, instruct you. I think that's quite pivotal. Beyond that, you need to find your own niche.
Hmm.
Beyond a mentor, you need to find your own niche. Everybody will need somebody. One of my favorite philosophies of life. Everybody needs three levels of relationship. Those who are ahead of you, I just mentioned a mentor. Those who are on the same level with you, and those who are behind you, who believe in you, who believe in your vision, your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, and they are prepared and willing and ready to work with you for you to get to your destination. I think this is also very, very crucial. Beyond that, in no particular order, I think you need to be very, very exposed composed, enlightened, educated, informed relative to your specific goals. Get all the trainings you can get, formal and informal. Sum it all up together. We are in that age of too much of information via internet. All means, just try to to get information relative to your visions, your goals, your objectives. That's also very, 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 very crucial.
Let me quickly mention something. I've just got a minute, and I want you to respond to this. You
Yeah.
mentioned three levels of relationships, and that talks about people. How
Yep.
powerful are people in our lives? Because I see people these days. I see people around, and they're like, if people do this to you, cut them off, cut them off, cut them off. It's like everybody's saying the ministry of everybody's in the life of cut them off. So, how powerful are people, the impact of people in our lives? In 50 seconds, please.
People are everything. People, people, people. Life, whatever it is that you do, whatever services um that you render or goods that you sell, you're going to sell to people.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever impacts, inspiration, that you want to be is meant to be for people or to people.
Mm-hmm.
You need people to guide you, to direct you, to instruct you. So if we don't have, anyone does not have a very sound people management skills,
Mm-hmm.
they will be deficient in life.
Hmm.
But I would also say everybody will never be on the same page with you. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. The Look, I was checking on the internet, the greatest leaders of all times, 10 of them. Some of them are leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody never believed in all of them, but
Hmm.
still the biggest or the greatest leaders of all times. Muhammad is mentioned as one of them. As one of them. I remember what's his name now. This Thomas Edison was mentioned as one of them. All of these people, you see, people will not always agreement with you, but there will be people that are cut out for you. And quote, mean to people who are not on the same page with you. Discover your own niche. Those who are cut out specifically. Life is all about the people you are sent to and the people that are sent to you.
Life is about the people that are sent into your life and the people that their lives. I
And you're
just want
not
to
sent to everybody, and everybody's not sent to you.
amazing. I just want to say it's been a wonderful conversation with you.
My pleasure,
And
my privilege.
I look forward to hosting you in Turkey. We have that plan. I hope
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
looking forward as well.
Turkey's a,
I'm looking
I made
forward as
bold to
well.
say Turkey is a very beautiful country, amazing
I look
places to
forward.
visit. Millions and millions of people trooping into Turkey for holidays to visit. It's such a beautiful place
Yeah,
to
I
to
could
visit and
tell.
to be. So I hope that you can come and visit Turkey as soon as you
ASAP.
can.
I'm looking
One more
forward.
time. One more time, thank you so much. And thank you to
Thank you so
everyone
much,
who have
Mr.
joined
Chigozie.
today
Thank you.
from
Thank
wherever you
you.
have joined us. It's a
Thank
wonderful,
you.
it's a wonderful, wonderful time.
Thank
Next
you.
week, Saturday, I'm going to be hosting another wonderful person is currently in Morocco, but is an American citizen in Morocco doing amazing work there. And he's gonna be that's Dr. Mitch. He's gonna be on the conversation with me next week Saturday. I look forward to having you all around. One more time from me and everybody. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank
It's been
you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Do have a
bye.
nice weekend. Bye bye. Bye. And everybody's not sent to you.
Amazing. I just want to say it's been a wonderful conversation with you.
My pleasure. My
And
privilege.
I look forward to hosting you in Turkey. We have that plan. I hope
Yeah, I'm looking forward as well.
Turkey's a,
I'm looking
I made
forward as
bold to
well.
say Turkey is a very beautiful country, amazing
I look
places to
forward.
visit. Millions and millions of people trooping into Turkey for holidays to visit. It's such a beautiful place
Yeah,
to
I
to
could
visit and
tell.
to be. So I hope that you can come and visit Turkey as soon as you
ASAP.
can.
I'm looking
One more
forward.
time. One more time. Thank you so much, and thank you to
Thank you so
everyone
much,
who have
Mr.
joined
Chigozie.
today
Thank you.
from
Thank
wherever you
you.
have joined us.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful, wonderful time.
Thank
Next
you.
week, Saturday, I'm going to be hosting another wonderful person is currently in Morocco, but is an American citizen in Morocco doing amazing work there. And he's gonna be that's Dr. Mitch. He's gonna be on the conversation with me next week, Saturday. I look forward to having you all around. One more time from me and everybody. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank
It's been
you. Thank you so
have
much.
a
Thank you.
wonderful day.
Thank you. Do have a
Bye.
nice weekend. Bye bye. Bye.